I think the best way to go about this is
Just to start.
Yeah.
Chris, what you got?
Yeah, what are we talking about?
Today, we'll be talking about metaphysics.
And I was going to say a dirty
science of
joke,
mind.
but science of mind.
Yeah, we were all in the same class for Science of Mind. We just got finished with the first Foundations class.
Yeah.
And what would you say is like your guys' main takeaways from the class? However, there are many.
Right. There are a lot, and also it kind of, part of the thing for me is like I've studied so many different books. I've read a lot of different books and studied different pathways to pursuing spirituality and exploring the nature of existence. And the science of mind it just seems like another way of stating a lot of the same things. And so for me, it was just reconfirming a lot of what I already had kind of learned.
I agree. That's totally how I felt about it. It was like it distilled all of that into more of an organized way of thinking about all of those concepts.
Right.
You know?
It was like taking a class about the things that you've learned.
Yeah.
It's a review course.
Well, I think what I liked about it is because it's done in like a workshop, collaborative way that you're actually putting it into practice rather than just learning concepts. You're actually being like, okay, so here's a concept. Now, what does that mean in your life? How does that look to you? You know, how do you incorporate that into your day-to-day? You know, like affirmations, like what an affirmation means, because constantly, like she said in the course, that we're affirming something all the time. Every time we're speaking, you can call it a prayer, you can call it an affirmation, but we're constantly talking about what we believe in, technically. Right. And so it's like if you want to change your beliefs, you have to kind of like rewire your affirmations to build the life that you want.
Yeah, and even your thoughts are really affirmations too.
For sure, yeah. I mean, and like, was it Gandhi or Buddha? One of them said, your thoughts become your beliefs become your words become your actions become your habits become you. And I think there's a lot of power in that, because when you think about it, that's true. You're what you're thinking affects how you're feeling affects how successful you're going to be at anything you do. Like if you feel down, if you feel put upon, if you're depressed or anxious or fearful, and that's like the predominant factor, the predominant thing in you, when you go to attempt something, you can't give it your full effort. You just can't. And so, I mean, and it affects how people react to you. It affects everything. So even if you're looking at it from a less spiritual standpoint, like it makes sense to pay attention to how you feel and pay attention to what your beliefs are, because then you can actually be successful when you go into things.
Yeah, I've been listening to the Science of Mind audio book too. It's different than the book. For some reason, I can't find like the original audio version of it. But anyway, in one of the parts, it's talking about like how we have like a thought aura, essentially. So there's like a field around us and it's full of thought. And so those thoughts actually are what attract us or repel us from things, because like you might come into contact with somebody that's got these negative thought auras and you can just kind of like tell, so you're repulsed by them. Or
but we all know that experience of walking into a room and just knowing that it's not a comfortable situation.
Oh yeah
You're like, what's the vibe in this room?
yeah Affirmations is kind of almost a hard one because I had like the wrong definition of it because early on I was in my like evolution and my spirituality would like stand in front of a mirror and like chant every single day and loud and like which was beneficial. I would say that for sure because it definitely changed my mind in a lot of ways, but for me back then it was just like words and so my intention was just through repetition, but I think even the affirmations that I was saying I didn't necessarily want for myself. I did, but like it's almost like a lot of times, at least for me, I'll have goals that aren't mine. And so, like to make $1 billion, that's not really a goal of mine because it's not really something that pushes me, but that's likely somebody else's goal,
right?
That I've grew up around or whatever. So those affirmations were the same thing. Like I was using somebody else's affirmations instead of like, with the science of mind, it's like, really thoughtful, like what do I really want and how am I going to say that to where I'm going to believe what I'm actually saying,
right? That was one of the things that was brought up in the Science of Mind course that really struck a chord with me was you can't just do any old affirmations. I mean, you can, but they're not going to really work for you, and you have to go with statements, with affirmations that you feel close to, that feel real, that feel that sort of substance to them, because otherwise, well, it's the same thing. What your beliefs are alter your ability to navigate effectively, and so if your affirmations don't mean anything, you're just going to say them and maybe probably get frustrated, like happened with me, and I'm sure you've experienced that too, right? Where you're just like saying these things that you don't believe, and it just kind of almost feel bad every time you say it.
Yeah, I liked how they had that exercise, although I didn't really do it, but I got to at least understand it. There's a lot of homework.
I liked it. Yeah. I didn't do
it. But how she said write the affirmation like 50 times, but you write it and then you write down how you feel, and so it was just like I am abundant, and then like you're like, oh, I felt really restricted or whatever because part of you doesn't believe that you are financially abundant or whatever the thing is, and so then you say it again, and so it's almost like easing into it, allowing you get to a felt state with the affirmation, to be comfortable, if like if you didn't believe that you were beautiful and that was your affirmation, like I am beautiful and worthy of love, but like the reason you're not seeing that out pictured in your life is because deep down you don't really believe that. And so it's like repeating that to you and then understanding what's hidden underneath why you don't believe that to be true.
So kind of like starting with something you can believe in and working into that I am beautiful. It's like, I like my eyes.
Right. Well, and I think that it's also like leading you into self-honesty, as I like in The Way of Mastery, when they ask you these they have you ask yourself these questions about being brutally self-honest, and some of them are just like, oh no, I would never do that, and at the end of it they're just like, if you didn't say yes to all these, you aren't really being honest with yourself. And there, some of them were really extreme, were like I've fantasized about murdering somebody or whatever, and you might not like think that you have, but it's in your reality. It's like the thought's somewhere out there. You're aware of that thought.
You've never had the thought while you're driving down the road,
and
you just like, you're like see somebody over there, and then you just have that split second thought of like, oh, what if I like, and then you're like, oh, that's horrible. Why would I do that?
Right. Yeah.
But like everybody has that thought.
I like that saying.
I'm glad you say that because
if you spot it, you got it.
I'm like,
don't go on a murderous rampage.
That's what a lot of people talk like. This might be way off topic, but a lot of people talk about like that shadow, integrating your shadow. It's like it's that part of yourself that you want to reject and push away just because it's horrible and it's not like not what you would choose or not what is acceptable to society. And so you just kind of like shove it down and try and get rid of it. But really, when you're, and this is another kind of, I think, part of this ties into the course a little bit, because like you said, the self-honesty, when you're really honest with yourself and you're looking at yourself with open eyes, then you can actually at that point treat yourself with love and then begin making changes.
Yeah. And it leads you to that radical self-acceptance and acceptance of other people, because like recognizing in yourself, realizing that the lack that you perceive is just a belief within yourself, and then you're giving yourself that love or whatever it is that you feel like you're lacking, and that's when that starts opening you up,
Right.
because otherwise just like, oh, I don't do these terrible things. I'm just going to keep shoving it down and put happy stickers on top of it. But that doesn't work. That's called spiritual bypassing.
Well, then you end up just hating yourself.
That's true.
Because you're not dealing with the problem.
Yeah.
You're just ignoring it, and then it just gets worse.
You're just creating a spiritual ego, and it's just gonna tear you apart every time you're not living up to that. Oh, well, this isn't love and light, so you're like, you're wrong, and so it just keeps a cycle of guilt, and it's just like you gotta like give yourself space and love yourself, and realize that everybody is going through that same thing.
Yeah, like in the last episode that we did, we were talking about no bad parts a little bit, and so that reminds me of that a little bit. Have you ever heard of no bad parts?
Tell me about it.
It's internal family systems. We have different parts within our being that have certain roles, whether that's more of an aggressive role, a feminine role, a masculine role, a motherly role, fatherly, and so you can find develop relationships with those parts within yourself, and then create a family within them. And so what we were talking about last time is that when there's that conflict, maybe there's the spiritual side of I know what's right, and then the other part, and we think that's bad, but that's
right.
a part that's judging another part. And so having a relationship with both of those parts, you can that can be a better relationship. So it's not so much like you're a bad person because you looked at that girl's ass or that guy's ass. So it's just I think there's a lot of play there.
And also aggression, that's something that's really not liked in our modern society, but it also has a purpose and a use and a value. And it's just about, if you try and push it away and shove it away, then it doesn't, it burns you in the
builds
end.
up,
right?
And,
But if you're channeling it effectively into a sport or even sometimes in your interaction, sometimes you do have to stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
If you know the right path, then or at least what's right for you, even if it's not right for other people, then it's important to be able to stand your ground when you're talking to somebody and not let them deviate you when you're on the right path. Because I know for me, I've had that problem quite often where I would shove down the aggression or the discomfort or whatever and just tell myself to suck it up and deal with it. And that just led to a spiraling depression that didn't help anybody,
Right.
Yeah, and I liked in that, because I watched an interview or listened to an interview about the author of that book, and I loved how it was. So you talk about protector parts, and it was really fascinating to find out what are your protector parts, and sometimes it's just that's what's a part that makes you feel tired, and it's just oh, I don't want to go there. So now I'm going to be sleepy and I'm going to take a nap, so I forget about going there, to speak to this part. And but one of his examples was the inner critic, and he's he found that most of the time our inner critic is only really protecting us because of some sort of trauma that happened when we were younger, and it starts criticizing you know, you're not good enough or whatever, and so you're always trying to achieve better and better and better and better and better, and it's like wearing you out. But then when they get down to the why it's protecting you, and then they say, okay, now that oh, and this was another thing, was like recognizing that like those protective parts think you're still a child. And so like letting them know, like, how you're talking to these parts and you're like, how old do you think I am? They're like, oh, you're 7 years old. And you're like, oh, actually I'm 38.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, so it's like recognizing that you're no longer a child and that you don't need to be protected, and that they can let go of these roles that they're filling, and then their role completely switches from being like your inner critic to your inner cheerleader. They're like, what would your role be now? And they're like, oh, I would cheer you on. I would be like, go get it, you know, like before I would be the personality that would keep you from doing things, and now it's the one that says like you're capable of anything. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive more into that, and I'm excited too for the next upcoming classes we've got for the really I like, you know, we're about to do the Four Agreements, great book, but also the Roots and the Foundations too, or whatever. I don't know anything about those, but I felt like Science of Mind 1 was pretty deep in itself.
And I really, one of the things I really like about Science of Mind is it lays it out very plainly. And it talks about how, well, I mean, it just like we hear from a lot of different teachers, change your thoughts, change your life. Like,
you're like, and how do you do that?
Well, and that's where the Science of Mind is very helpful, because it lays it out. It teaches you about all these different methods that you can use to address specific problems or address specific thought patterns, and it helps you to actually change them. And so, yeah, I think it's a wonderful book to read, and it's not written in a bunch of archaic language that's hard to slog through like some other books. Like Course in Miracles.
Yeah, A Course in Miracles is actually
okay.
It's a little harder to read for sure. We're doing the circle, and I'm like, what?
I don't mind it. It's not terrible, but
I think that, well, and it reminded
like
me of
the
something
Bible.
that Jackie said in Science of Mind. She said that she had the hardest time reading. She was like, how are you guys liking reading? And then she was like, I hated it the first couple of times she read it, and then like she would read it again. She's like, has it rewritten itself and I can understand it now? But that's exactly what the Course in Miracles does, where like literally, because I mean, like I'm on my like 4th year doing the lessons, and it used to be very blocky, and I would listen to a lot of resources about it, and that had really helped. But now when I read it, I understand it a lot more, and every year that I do the lessons, I'm like, did I read this before? It's like you have this complete new understanding every time you touch into it. It's like the words have rearranged, and all of a sudden you're like, I like how there's one of the lessons that says you'll have these light episodes, and I had to I was listening to it, and then I rewound it, and I was just like, what's this? And I don't remember hearing that before, even though I had already done it 2 years in a row before that. So that was like the 3rd year doing it, and I'd had light episodes where like all of a sudden, you know, truth kind of comes into you, and everything gets like imbued with light around you. You're just like, what? Am I ascending?
I've had that experience before. I've had that experience before.
That's pretty cool.
In life.
Yeah.
Like when you're in a really terrible situation for a long time, and finally you get out of it, and like just it feels just the weight lifting off, and suddenly everything just opens up. And
I've actually been feeling that like since the last ayahuasca ceremony. Like I did some deep work on like self-love and stuff like that, and so integrating that, it feels so much different. And I mean, even both of you, since the first time I met you guys, like you guys seem different and more light and more like empowered in your voices and the way that you stand and present yourselves, you know. So it's cool to see, like, you know, and you haven't done ayahuasca, so maybe ayahuasca helped you a little bit, but even just some of these concepts in the Science of Mind too, I'm sure were a way to, you know, tools for your
and the active work active effort in learning and growing and allowing.
Well, it reminds me, because in the Course of Miracles, when one mind heals, all minds heal.
Yeah,
so
I was
like
gonna bring
even
that up
each
too.
one of us doing our work, like our projected perceptual reality is constantly upgrading, and so like the more we are uncovering our enlightenment and stuff like that, we're seeing that in other people because that's a reflection of ourselves. And so you doing your, and it reminds me too, it's one of Don Ruiz's books, not the Four Agreements, but it's either The Voice of Knowledge or The Mastery of Love, where he has this analogy or metaphor or whatever, where you go into a movie theater and each person has a name, or there's your name on one of the marquees, and you walk in and it's like your story of your life, and you're the only person in there. And then you go to your mother's, and but like it's all distorted, like you recognize the characters but they don't look anything like the characters that you have. And so it's just like we all look different to each other. Like you guys, like if you guys saw through my eyes how you guys look, you'd probably look a lot different than you see yourselves.
Right.
And then I would look a lot different as how I see myself.
Yeah.
And so so I think about that. And so thanks for seeing us better.
Yeah.
Well, I've noticed the same thing too, though. Like, as I have grown and matured and uncovered enlightenment, I have noticed that the world is a better place. Like, substantively.
Yeah. You guys are both getting more handsome by the day.
Thank you.
I feel it.
Are you hitting on me?
What's that?
Are you hitting on me?
Constantly.
Yeah. No, there's also something that when we're talking about like one mind, healing heals all minds. I think in the listening, because again, it is a little different than the reading, but it talks about like we share the same mind, which is kind of an interesting way to think about it. We're able to access, it's like mind and then body and spirit. We all manifest this body. We use the same mind, and we're just extensions through spirit, I guess, something along those lines. So that almost makes me think too that I can, like, through telepathy, through mind, communicate in that mind space and even heal. Like even like
you're absolutely the king.
Yeah, like with some of my meditations, Master Co and Tony Robbins, and there's all these other meditations where you're focused on sending people love and seeing them and healing and stuff like that. And so you're actually like, connected to their mind, implanting health and love. And
I mean, we all have that experience of thinking of a person and then they call, right? And so there's something going on, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a matter of developing that connection with intuition, with spirit, with however you want to look at it.
Right.
With your inner self.
Yeah, they say true telepathy is done when you're in love's presence. And so like if we're not, which would be, if we're in our ego mind, we're like, I'm going to communicate with this person.
They need to know
I'm thinking about them. But I mean, like but if you're like in the presence of love, like that's when you're sitting next to somebody and then it's like you'll respond to something and they're like, did I even say that out loud? It's like and then it freaks them out and you're just like, no. But yeah, actually I'd recommended that to a friend of mine who was very nervous about having a conversation with her ex-boss or whatever. They were having a meeting, and I said, well, before you go in, just like center yourself in your car and send her love, send her, have gratitude for the time that you spent working there, love for her and her business and stuff like that, and I guarantee you the meeting will go well. And she went in and she was all like, it really took off a lot of stress. She's all like, she was happy to see me. Like it was really just like this transformative, because we do create our own realities. And so like if you go in there with a lot of angst and stuff like that this person's going to be angry with me, that's what's going to show up. you know. But if you go in there like as an expression of love, that you're sending this person love, that they've done everything they could do for you or whatever, like they're not a bad person, you know, because it's so easy to be like, this person screwed me over, you know, and you know, there's so many people who have left jobs that are just in a bitter place, and it's just like, you don't have to, you'll just continue to repeat that pattern until you realize that no one's actually doing anything to you, you know, like that it's really where you're at in your vibrational
right. Everything is a response
rhythm
to what you're offering.
Yeah. And yeah, like the only thing that can be lacking is what you're not giving.
Right.
So if the situation seems unloving, it's because you're not giving love.
It's like the thought aura too, like in the example with going into the interview. It's like there's like two different thought auras that you go into that situation with, either love or fear, and people pick up on that with their own thought aura.
Positive feedback loop of,
so it plants a seed into their mind of how to act, maybe unconsciously.
Yeah, because and that's why intention is so important. To one of my favorite teachers, Abraham Hicks, talks about segment intending, right? So when you're getting ready to go into a new situation, stop and think, okay, what do I want this to be? What do I want to feel going into this? What state of mind do I want to be in? And it makes a difference, because if you decide beforehand that you're going to enjoy yourself and be happy and have a good interaction with people before you go into it, then that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's like, again, planting the seed too, because like you'll remember that intention that you set later on during the process. You're like, oh yeah, that's what I chose. So how can I, you know, act in accordance with that?
Yeah. And the other thing is, someone who goes into a situation without setting an intention, you're going to be on autopilot, basically.
Susceptible.
And yes, you're going to be susceptible to what the other person is thinking and feeling.
Because that also brings up the subject of thought forms. Like, you know, if you're in place where there's like a thought form created of extra stress or fear or whatever, you become more susceptible to that. Like in Abraham Hicks, they make that reference about this person that all of a sudden had all this fear about a bridge collapsing while they were on the bridge. Well, if several people have had that feeling, and you think about it like driving in traffic, if you're in traffic, could you imagine how many thought forms are out there if you don't segment intend before you go into traffic? That like there's all these people, like you have all this anxiety and angst, like I'm gonna be late to wherever I'm going. You know,
it's dangerous.
It's dangerous. I'm gonna get in a car accident.
Or all these people are bad drivers. I hate everybody.
Yeah, like all this stuff. Exactly. Like it's just all this tension, and it's just like coming in on you, and it's just like. And yeah, you always have the choice to accept it or not. But if you're not consciously aware that that's what's happening, you believe that those thoughts are your thoughts.
Well, and because you're saying that, it makes me think of, like, you know, at the end of each of our classes, there was what was it called when you do the outro prayer?
Oh, the benediction?
Benediction. A lot of times it's about like going home safely. And so that's basically setting that intention. So that makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah.
With what you're saying.
Yeah, the idea, what you said, those thoughts, you'll think those thoughts are yours. And that's something that I've come across quite a lot lately, is no thoughts are really yours. All thoughts are offered to you, and then you get to pick which ones you want to hold on to and align with. And I think that's an idea that brings a person a lot of power.
Oh yeah.
In their own feeling and thinking space, and then in everything else, because that's kind of the root of everything else.
Yeah, when you're like, I can't remember which band it was, maybe it was the Beatles or something like that, but ones that are more in tune with their art and stuff like that, whenever they would have an idea for a song, they would want to go and record it as soon as possible, because if they don't do it, somebody else will. And
Yeah.
and people always feel like someone's stealing an idea from them. It's just like, no, they did not come into your house and steal the idea for
Right.
this. Like, they're universal
Extract it
ideas.
from your
It's
brain.
Mhm.
yeah, like if you're not gonna take action on the inspired, if you're not gonna take inspired action, it's gonna go to somebody else.
Speaking of, I have an app idea I really want to work on.
Is it gonna be called inspired action?
Could be. Probably not, though. But yeah.
I feel like I hate that.
That's a really great name for an app. It's just not a good name for this app.
Oh, okay. We're gonna create an app called.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's gonna compete with his inspired action app.
Yeah.
No, mine's for HVAC stuff. Totally
Oh.
different.
Oh yeah, that would. Yeah, that does
It's
not
just
work.
an inspired idea that could be done.
Inspired HVAC.
Yeah.
Well, you were saying something about like, none of our thoughts are ours, right? And it made me think of this last ayahuasca ceremony for me, where I was having kind of that experience. It almost felt like they were my thoughts, but I get what you're saying for sure. But I could see the form of the thought, like kind of physically see it, but it was internally. Like I'm like dancing but I'm closed my eyes and I'm thinking, but then I could see, it's maybe like a bubble and it's a thought. And so, and oftentimes they were negative thoughts or mostly about myself. Like, what are people thinking of me?
Right.
I'm bad at this. I suck at that, or, I'm mean, or whatever the thought form is, and it's passing, but I was able to see it and then capture it and then inspect it and decide if it was mine, which was the first time I've ever been able to do that, because it almost seems like it's like a conveyor belt of thoughts that just fucking,
well, and that's the thing, like thoughts feel like they're yours, especially ones that you've held for a very long time. You identify with it. You hear sometime when you're a kid in school, oh, you're ugly, and then you just you repeat that to yourself. I'm ugly. I'm ugly. That's why she doesn't like me. I'm ugly. That's why he doesn't like me. I'm ugly. And so that becomes a thought that you have taken and made yours. But really, it's not yours. It was offered to you by the world, the existence, whatever, and then you took it. So the process, like you said, is when you go into meditation, and this can happen all the time. In fact, this is why you meditate, to build awareness, self-awareness, like we talked about Friday. And you build the awareness, and then your practice, the practice of growth from that point forward, is being aware, seeing what you're experiencing, whether it's a thought, whether it's a feeling, whether it's a situation, and then recognizing what the truth is. Not what you've been told, not what you've been given, but seeing into the situation and saying, okay, this is reality.
Yeah, the you that you think you are has no thoughts. The you that you think you are is a thought. Like the person that you like, the person,
your persona,
the persona of Ian is a thought. Like, I'm not actually this body or this person having these experiences, or having individual thoughts separate from other people.
Right.
Which actually goes, it goes right into the Course in Miracles, is that we are all just thoughts in the mind of God.
Yeah.
Just hallucinating this whole experience.
Well, I mean, why not?
It's quite a trip.
Yeah.
It's a fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is actually. The more, the better I get at controlling the illusion or whatever, the hallucination.
And seeing it properly.
Well, it's kind of like lucid dreaming, you know? Like you can lucid dream yourself. God is like lucid dreaming, but the better you get at that lucid dreaming, the directions you can go with it are in your control.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it has, at first, building the awareness kind of sucked, right? Because you're like, oh, I'm doing it again. Oh, I'm doing it again. Oh, I'm doing it again. There's that thought again.
Mm-hmm.
But then it just becomes like a game, because and you get better at it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just like anything, it's a skill, just like anything. And so the more you practice it, the better you get. And then when you start getting good at a thing, then you can have fun with it.
Mm.
And I think that's kind of where I've started to find myself, is it is fun. Even the kind of difficult situations, like having a hard conversation with somebody, like even that's kind of fun now.
Yeah, it's kind of like
especially in retrospect.
100%. I think I'm experiencing the same thing on a self-love level, where standing up for myself or putting myself in situations I might have been nervous about, or those kinds of things, that's a game to me now. It's like,
Right.
how can I
push
get
myself
nervous and then realize there was nothing to be nervous about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is the fun part for sure.
And then you start feeling some of that self-confidence that people talk about, and you may never have experienced your whole life until now.
Yeah.
For me, and it's fun.
Well, yeah, and because I was actually just talking to somebody earlier today about that. It's just that, like, you have all these aspects of God qualities about you, and so it's just like, if you want to be more confident, like, life is going to present you with opportunities to prove that you are a confident person. But then it's just like, but we get caught up in these ego selves, thinking that we're not good enough, or that, oh, I couldn't do that, I don't have the confidence. And it's just like, bitch, this is what you're here, like, this is your moment to get up there and be confident. Like, you want to be more confident. And so we presented you, and it doesn't matter if you failed or not, because it's a stepping stone. It's like allowing yourself to embody the confidence.
Well, that's probably why we don't do it, is because it's like, bitch, go do this. Not a bitch.
I'm sorry, that's how the spirit talks to me. I'm like, bitch.
Yeah, for me,
Spirit called me a bitch. Maybe I'm listening to the wrong voice. Okay,
Yeah.
Spirit doesn't say it. They're like,
honey,
little honey, you go on up there, boop, 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 boop.
Yeah, I have noticed that since starting on this, like, active work, this active growth, I do still sometimes find myself backing away from situations that are kind of scary or stressful or whatever. At the same time, though, because I've built that awareness, I see it as it's happening, and then I can sit with it afterward, like, and recognize and give myself the love and the acceptance and allowance. And then the next time I'm presented with a similar situation, it's easier. And so I'm still like, even if you aren't going through with every opportunity you're presented with to be courageous or to be, brave or whatever, you're still growing. And I've definitely found a lot of benefit in recognizing that, because you're still growing, you're still gaining, you're still benefiting. And
well, and it's also fascinating to know that, like, you exist on all levels of this consciousness, and so it's just like, you're brought up with these obstacles or whatever, and then whether you tackle them and achieve them, or whether you fail, that's already been predestined by you. And so it's just like being able to be in complete acceptance of the moment, to know that everything is all right.
Yes.
And because it's all ego when it's just all like, oh, you're failing, this should be different. And it's just like, and that's the biggest mistake, is to think that things should be different right now. It's just like, if they should have been different, they would have been different.
Right.
Like, to know that and that's one of the 4 agreements, is like, always do your best, but also to realize that, like, your best looks different sometimes. Sometimes you're more tired, and your best might be less than another day, but it's all perfect, you know?
And yeah, best is also like subjective too.
Right.
It's like
Right.
we think best is like what someone else is doing, that's best. And I do that for myself in business all the time. It's like I look at people on social media who are running their businesses and are successful. I'm like,
well, but you don't know what their background is, right?
And comparison is the thief of joy.
Right. Yeah, that too.
Mhm.
Well, but you're when you're comparing yourself to others, and you're looking at the work of somebody who's been in the who's in the field and doing well and is successful, like you don't know how long they've been working, how many years they failed before they finally started seeing success, or what other areas they tried and failed before they tried this. Because some people try something and are successful very quickly, but they've done a lot of other work that prepared them for it.
Right. That's something I have to remind myself all the time. It's like I'm not where I feel like I should be, but then the reality of it is like all the things that I've done up until this point that have prepared me for, I think, something bigger than what I'm even doing right now. It's even hard. It's hard to see it, but and this might even be part of it too, like a step in that direction.
Yeah, like maybe something will click one of these days, and you're like, well, this isn't even what I want to do, and so it's just like that next step. You'll already be prepared for it, and that'll launch your success. Like, just following that joy.
Well, that's something I've found in my life and again, recently, just in the last couple of months, is I've been looking at myself and my experience, and like I feel like there are times when I'm kind of in a low state where I feel like I'm failing, right? Because I'll be turning 34 here in a couple of weeks, and I know, and I don't have a lot of physical goods to show for it, right? I don't have a lot of money or anything like that at the moment. But when I go through the laundry list of everything I've experienced and what I'm good at, like I don't see exactly where I'm aiming yet, but I do see that once I get there, I'm gonna just blow up. Like, so I can, when you're really honest with yourself and you look at everything you've experienced and everything you've studied and everything you've tried, like you'll start to see that there's a lot to you, and you bring a lot with you, and you have a lot to offer. And so maybe you're currently pointed in a direction that's not ideal for you, but if you, like you were indicating, if you're living your life and you're really focused on like the present moment and just living in a good space, then your opportunities will come to you. And you're always learning, you're always growing. So yeah, I think that's really a really important point, is live your life as you, accept where you are, love yourself where you're at, and be willing to keep growing.
Yeah, and I think too, like, recognize and own that you are bringing a lot more to the table than the things that you're focused on. Because I think that, because for me especially, like, just diving more into like that sense of not feeling enough or whatever, and then and I might compare it to spending money or donating money or something like that, and not having enough money, but then realizing that like I don't have to give the same way that other people do, and realize that there are things that I'm giving that are of value to people that aren't money of value, you know, but realizing that like money is just an energy, and I'm giving an energy as well. It's just not tangible bills,
right?
And that's really opened a lot in my life to like allowing more in and being like, I am enough, and then like the gates of abundance and things are actually like flowing to me, that I am deserving of things because I am giving value to other people.
And when you're not so focused on the money, and you're looking at the other types of value, other types of energy, I see that I'm receiving tons, just incalculable amounts of wealth, just by people giving me their attention, their focus, their love. I have meals bought for me all the time, and like I spend right.
Not from this guy, but I get him too.
Yeah, right. And so and it's not like we're even asking for it. It just happens because we're being there and we're being present and we're being ourselves and really giving of ourselves energetically and emotionally and our knowledge and our effort, and we get rewarded for it. And that's like a simple fact of existence. And so I think that's a really important point also to think about, is like money isn't the only wealth. In fact, it might be the most visible, but if you look at the ultra wealthy, they have a lot of money, but they get more free stuff, like a lot, because they're giving of themselves.
Reminds me of that A Million to One or A Million to One. Did you ever see that movie?
I don't think
so.
Oh,
It's super cute. Well, no, he's like, so I think he's trying to open up a restaurant or something like that, but he gets approached by this guy in a limo, and the guy gives him a check for $1 million and says, if you don't spend this in a month, you'll get, I'll bring you something of real value, or something like that. But he like starts showing people, it starts transforming his life, and he doesn't spend the check, but like people start treating him differently. And it's a really fascinating story to think of, like, the vibration of, like, because he could have
knowing that you have the money.
Yeah, like, because he could have cashed the check, and then he would have just had $1 million, and maybe that would have helped him out or not. Maybe he would have dwindled back down to where he was, but it just kind of started shifting things in his life, and people started giving him things, as service, like, oh, there's this important person now in the room, and it was just like this total life shift. It was
and that's the funny thing, because that's actually a tool that is recommended by Abraham Hicks, and I think Napoleon Hill also, is put money in your wallet that you don't spend, or like $100 bill in your wallet that you don't spend, and spend it mentally. Say, oh, I could go buy that. I could buy that. I could buy that.
And
I could buy that
dollar
shoe
every time you do it. And just like, you're like, $100. You're like, I'm gonna buy that pair of shoes, and then you just don't.
Yeah. But it helps you build that abundance mindset, and from that, it gives you a level of confidence. When you move through the world with confidence, doors open for you.
Because they're all just symbols anyway.
Right. Yeah. So.
That's what you got.
No, I'm just taking it all in.
Yeah.
I think we're wrapping pretty good.
Yeah. Good stuff.
The science of mind it helps you develop that mindset. It helps you develop the confidence. It helps you to work through your issues, your thinking issues, your feeling issues, and it helps to clarify things. Just like all of the great works. Like a lot of people hate the Bible, but the Bible will give you that too.
Which most people hate it without even knowing what it says.
Right.
Like myself used to. I was like, oh no, the Bible, fuck that. That's like some weird.
Well, because of other people, because of other perceptions, and but it's all, and there are statements in there that go totally against modern culture and are kind of hard to swallow, and so it's understandable.
Take what you like and leave the rest.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, and it's really less about, because I mean, these are all just like information that's out there, Bible, Course in Miracles, Science of Mind, all these things. But it's like, when it becomes a religion, that they're selling their own agenda or whatever.
Well, you're operating off of rules and regulations rather than
traditions and someone else's interpretation of what this means. And it's just like, well, if you take the time to like sit with it and it's like, well, what does this mean to me? Because like truths are individual, so it's just like there is one truth, but it's going to look different for each person,
and every person has to find their own unique path to it.
Right.
Yeah. In the audio version of The Science of Mind, it talks about how, like, when we're studying really anything, we're studying someone else's thoughts. You know.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
this kind of goes back to that topic of thoughts. You know, we're thinking about someone else's thinking.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that would be really, I mean, they wouldn't really be their thoughts, but it would be their distortion through their ego filter. And so, like, because when they say, "Oh, who wrote the Bible?" God wrote the Bible, or whatever. I mean, it all comes from that one mind, but it's coming through a human. So it's gonna
Get filtered.
It's gonna be filtered, you know. So all these teachings are really teaching the same things, but it's in a different language, you know. And so, you know, you can tap into spirit and write your own book of the exact same stuff, but it's just like it would speak to you, and then may speak to other people if you published it, but it doesn't. It's not the truth. Yeah, it's not. You know, it's all just a pointer to truth.
Right.
Like the Course in Miracles says, like, it's, you know, it's an illusion that leads you to truth, but it is not the truth itself. Like, you still have to let go of the book at one point, or any of these teachings, because they're never actually the truth.
Right.
Like, nothing in this reality is true.
You have to forge your own path.
Yeah.
You have to connect to your own intuition, build your own self-awareness, build your own sense of what the world really is, and go from there. And you can build it, you can receive it, you can, you know, just kind of figure it out over time, which is where all of us are anyway, is we just kind of figure it out. But if you're taking anyone else's word for it, you're not going to end up where you're supposed to be.
And I really liked the class on forgiveness, because it really put it into perspective that I enjoyed, because, you know, we all know forgiveness is the path, the illusion that leads you to love, because in true love there is no need for forgiveness, so that is too also an illusion. However, if we're steeped in illusion, we need some way out of it.
Right.
But I really liked how we made the little clay things of, like, what unforgiveness feels like. And it was like, you know, it really, like, touched a lot of chords. We were all crying. And then, like, you know, moving through it, and then, like, recreating something out of clay that was like, what does self-forgiveness feel like? And, like, really letting that embodied feeling of what self-forgiveness feels like, and letting that unfold within you, I felt was a really beautiful process.
It was.
Yeah, it was like pain turning into, you know, something
healing.
So free.
Yeah. It was like dissolving some blocks that we've all been carrying with us.
Nice, guys.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, Science of Mind was definitely a game changer for me, and I'm excited for the next couple classes. And I'm definitely going to be auditing, if there's a chance to audit, probably next year, I guess. But yeah, I'd like to take it all the way, potentially, see where that goes.
Yeah,
me too.
I've so far enjoyed the process. I always enjoy learning and growing, and so I can't see it not being worthwhile.
Right.
We could all start a church.
There we go.
A cult, yeah. I like the idea of a cult.
just for the extra, you know, spice to it.
Yeah, it's way cooler when we all go down.
Or sizzle.
When we all get raided.
Right. We all get raided. We'll all get raided together as one.
As one.
And then we'll ascend all at once.
What color should we wear?
I'm partial to, like, green or purple.
Okay.
Green for, like, nature, vibrancy, life.
You get, like,
you know,
purple
or
shirts
like
with, like,
royal.
a green in the middle, like
There
a
we
bursting
Yeah,
you know,
like a
something-
sunburst of green.
sunburst of green in the
Yeah.
heart chakra area.
Okay.
You know, like those ghillie suits.
Yeah, just ghillie suits. That's the cult. The cult uniform is a ghillie
It was
suit.
just camouflage.
They could be chakra colors from like the ground up. It'd be, or we're gonna be like
There we
red
go.
pants, and then like it like change. It'd be like
No,
tie-dye shirts.
it all has to be like uniform color, like stripes.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
we're imprisoned in a window.
Yeah, except. Yeah.
We could all wear bandanas
Yeah.
with the purple, and well, I guess a beanie, so like purple and then like or indigo and then like violet white. At the
No,
top.
it has to be like a full body onesie that like zips up to the
Oh, that'd
chin
be
and
fun.
has like a hood on it.
Oh, and
too.
it can have a unicorn horn
Yeah.
for your third eye.
There we go.
Yep. We'll get on making
That's
these.
There we go.
that sounds very warm.
Maybe that's just warm in here, so it's making us think it's warm.
Well, no, I've
well-
worn a onesie before.
Well,
I mean, it was made out of fleece or something. I don't know.
yeah, just make
Those
it like
things don't
linen.
Okay,
Make
yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
breathable
Well,
linen.
if cults have to have linen.
Right.
It's gotta be linen stuff.
Or silk.
There we go. Silk is
Oh,
good.
silk sounds hot.
Well,
too.
okay, silk is only for the higher ranking members. So
Good job, guys.
All right.
that was
High fives.
that'll conclude today's episode. All right. Peace out.
Peace
that
out.
was fun.